My name is Aria Vale. For the last 6 years, I have been a night shift waitress at the Blue Juniper, a diner tucked away on Mercury Row, where the city of North Cross pretends to sleep but never quite does. My life is measured in coffee refills, the smell of burnt toast, and the low hum of the neon sign outside. I am good at my job. I remember the regulars, the way they take their eggs, and the stories they tell when the hour gets late. My best friend, Mira, says I am stuck in a loop. She, with her bright, chaotic energy, lives for the next thing. I live for the final bill of the night. That is why she took it upon herself to change my luck, as she put it. She had arranged a blind date for me, a blind date set for midnight at the Iron Bridge Terminal, the ferry terminal. It was the most North Cross thing I had ever heard, and I hated it. "It will be an adventure," she insisted, pushing a strand of pink hair out of her eyes. "It sounds like the beginning of a bad joke," I countered, but I had reluctantly agreed. It was 10 minutes to closing. The last customer, a quiet man who had nursed one black coffee for 2 hours, finally left. As I cleared his table, I saw it, a phone. It was an old-style flip phone, heavy and black, the kind you see in old movies, a burner. Mira saw it from the bar. "That must be him," she whispered, her eyes wide with excitement. "Your date. He must have left it." It seemed absurd, but Mira was already building a narrative. "Text him," she urged, sliding it across the counter. "Tell him you are on your way." I flipped it open. The screen glowed a sickly green. The contact list was almost empty, clearly a device meant for a single purpose. And that purpose probably was not dating a waitress from the Juniper. "Mira, this is a bad idea." "Do it, Aria. Just say you will be there. Be there at 1200 hours. Don't be late." I sighed. My fingers felt clumsy on the raised plastic keys. I typed out her exact words. "Be there at 1200, don't be late." My thumb hovered over the send button. I was supposed to enter the number Mira had scribbled on a napkin, but in my exhaustion, my thumb slipped. I did not text the number on the napkin. I had somehow highlighted the very first contact saved in the phone. The name was simple. Authoritative, D. Lucero. Underneath it, a note. Urgent contact only. Before my brain could catch up with my hand, I had pressed send. The message was gone. I had not texted my blind date. I had texted D. Lucero. At the time, I did not know who that was. I did not know that name belonged to Don Dante Lucero, the head of the Lucero Syndicate, the invisible force that controlled the city's shipping, its politics, and its shadows. The burner phone buzzed in my hand almost instantly, a reply. It was not, "See you soon." The green screen lit up with 5 words that sent a chill straight down my spine. Who just used the port code? My blood ran cold. Port code 12 o'clock was just a time. Iron Bridge was just a place. I stared at the phone, my breath catching in my throat as if summoned. My personal phone, tucked deep in my apron pocket, began to ring. It was Mira, her voice high and breathless. "Aria, change of plans. He just texted me. He said the terminal is too windy. He wants to meet somewhere else." "Mira, where?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "An old warehouse in the Glass Quarter, number 17. A warehouse, an old, abandoned warehouse. Every survival instinct I had honed from years of walking home alone at 3 in the morning screamed at me. This was not a date. This was wrong. I ran home. My small second-floor apartment in Ash Harbor was my sanctuary, the only place I felt truly safe. Tonight, it felt different. The air was thick with the smell of the nearby docks, damp wood and old brine, and the low, mournful sound of a foghorn rolled in from the river, wrapping the building in a blanket of sound. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird in a cage. I slammed the deadbolt mount, leaning my forehead against the cool, painted wood of the door. I had to stop this. I pulled out my own phone, my fingers shaking as I typed a message to Mira. "I am not going. This is a mistake. I am canceling." I never sent the message. A knock echoed through the tiny apartment. It was not a polite rap. It was 3 heavy, measured thuds. Boom, boom, boom. The sound vibrated through the floor, a physical presence. I froze. I crept to the door and looked through the peephole. A man stood in the dim, flickering light of the hallway. He was tall, dressed in a long, dark overcoat that looked expensive even through the distorted lens. He was perfectly still, his posture exuding a calm that was more terrifying than any threat. His face was angular, his eyes dark, seeming to absorb the weak light. I felt, somehow, that he knew I was watching him. I opened the door, just a crack, leaving the security chain engaged. "I am Dante Lucero," he said. His voice was low and smooth, with an edge that suggested it was not used to being questioned. It matched the knock. "You just activated a meet using a port signal. Do you know whose game you just walked into?" My first instinct was to slam the door, to deny everything. I fumbled with the chain, trying to push the heavy door shut. In that split second, a sound like a sharp firecracker exploded next to my ear, a deafening crack. Splinters of wood erupted from the doorframe, biting my cheek. The bullet was lodged in the wood, exactly where my head had been a moment before. Someone from the alley, from the dark street below, had fired a warning shot. Before I could scream, before I could even process the white-hot sting on my face, Dante Lucero slammed his shoulder into the door. The chain snapped from the wall as if it were thread. He did not lunge at me. He moved past me, one strong hand grabbing my arm and pulled me back, yanking me out of the doorway and into the shadows of my own living room. He kicked the door shut with his foot. "The blind date was a trap," he said, his voice a harsh, urgent whisper. He was not looking at me. He was listening, his gaze fixed on the door. "If you open that door again, they won't miss." We were in my living room, but it was no longer my space. The air was split by the sharp, resinous smell of the splintered door frame and the faint, metallic tang of gunpowder. Dante Lucero moved with a liquid economy, his back to me as he listened at the door he had just kicked shut. "My enemy, the Vesuvius Circle, set this trap," he said, his voice low, not a trace of panic in it. "They used the port code, the time, the terminal to bait someone, a civilian, you." My mind was reeling, trying to catch up. Bait for what? "They wanted to make a move at the terminal tonight. They needed a diversion, a soft target to draw my security detail away. They figured a civilian date would be the perfect lure." He turned, and in the dim light from the street lamp, his eyes were like polished stones. "You text me. My guards go to the terminal to see who is using a high-level code, and Vesuvia hits them in the open." "I am just a waitress," I shot back, the words sounding weak even to my own ears. My heart was a frantic drum. "I do not know anything about port codes or your enemies. I was just supposed to go on a date." His gaze dropped, not to me, but to my jacket, which I had tossed on a chair when I ran in. A small white square was sticking out of the pocket, the ferry ticket for the blind date. He took 2 steps, his long coat barely whispering, and plucked it from the pocket. He did not look at it. He held it up and recited the sequence of numbers and letters printed below the destination. "Ironbridge, code 77J4. That is not a ticket number. Miss Vale, that is the call sign for the midnight loading schedule. You match that with a 12 o'clock meet, and you just sent a very specific message." My throat was dry. I did not know. My friend... He cut me off, his head tilting. "Quiet." I stopped breathing, and then I heard it. Faint but unmistakable. Hurried footsteps on the building's old wooden staircase. Not one person, several. They were heavy, clumsy, not trying to be subtle. Dante's hand shot out, not to touch me, but a sharp gesture for silence. He did not move toward the pulverized door. He moved toward the kitchen, toward the back of the apartment. He pointed to the fire escape window. I had not used it in 3 years. He unlatched the window with a metallic click that sounded deafeningly loud and pushed it open. The alley below was a canyon of brick and shadows. He went first, dropping onto the metal platform without a sound, and then reached back for me. "Now," My legs were shaking, but the footsteps were louder, closer, hammering on the landing outside my apartment. I tumbled out the window. We were 2 flights down in seconds. The alley stank of wet garbage and stale beer. We hit the cracked pavement, and they were already there, rounding the corner, 3 of them dressed in black, cutting off the only exit. I pressed my back against the brick, my nails digging into the mortar. Dante Lucero did not reach for a gun. He stepped forward, into the pale yellow light spilling from a neighboring building. The first man lunged with a knife. Dante moved inside the attack, a precise, brutal motion. I heard a sickening snap, and the man went down, his arm at an angle that was not human. The second man swung a pipe. Dante raised his arm, not to block, but to deflect, and I saw he had grabbed the metal lid from a nearby trash can. The pipe clanged uselessly against it, the vibration shaking the attacker's hands. Dante used the lid as a shield and a weapon, shoving it forward into the man's face, following with a low, driving kick. The third man was smarter. He was holding back, pulling a gun. I did not think. I just reacted. My apron pocket was still full. I reached in, my hand closing around the only weapons I owned, 2 shakers, 1 salt, 1 pepper. I threw them hard. The pepper shaker missed, but the salt shaker shattered against the man's shoulder, and a cloud of fine white powder hit him in the face. He roared, his hands flying to his eyes. It was all Dante needed. He closed the distance, a shadow moving faster than I thought possible. It was not a fight, it was a dismantling. When he was done, 3 men were on the ground, and he was not even breathing hard. He grabbed my arm. "This way." We ran. 2 blocks over, a black sedan with no license plate was parked in the shadows. He pushed me into the passenger seat and slid behind the wheel. The engine started with a low, powerful growl. "Talk," he commanded, pulling out into the empty street. "Everything. Who set up the date? Where did these messages come from?" My hands were trembling so hard I could barely get the burner phone out of my pocket. I handed it to him, along with the crumpled napkin from Mira with the original number on it. He glanced at the napkin, then at the burner phone, scrolling through the messages. His jaw tightened. He held up the phone. "This string of numbers, it is not a phone number. It is the manifest code for the waterway, the container schedule. Someone was not just trying to trap me. They were trying to frame you for the leak." "I want to go home," I said, my voice cracking. "Please, I am just a waitress." "You are not," he said flatly. "Not anymore. You are the woman who used my contact line with a high-level port code. You are the woman they tried to grab." I looked at my apartment building as we drove past the end of the street. It looked alien. The doorway, a dark mouth. "I do not care. Take me back." Dante Lucero reached into his coat and placed a thin piece of brushed black metal on the dashboard. It looked like a credit card, but heavier. "If you hear those 3 knocks again," he said, his voice quiet, "you do not open that door. For anyone, unless it is me." The car did not slow down. We were leaving Ash Harbor, heading downtown toward the lights. I watched my neighborhood disappear. The sedan took a sharp right, pulling into the velvet-roped, ridiculously exclusive entrance of Club Hailstone, the Lucero Syndicate's legitimate front, a place I had only read about. He put the car in park, the engine idling. He turned to me, the faint glow of the dashboard illuminating the hard planes of his face. "I am not keeping you, Miss Vale. You are free to go. But if you leave, they will find you before dawn, and they will not be as polite as I was." I stared at the club's neon sign, a stylized blue H. I did not trust him. I was terrified of him. But he was right. I was not safe. I made my choice. I would stay. It was not because I trusted him. It was not because I was brave. It was because as the car sat there, humming in the silence, I heard it. From the darkness of the street we had just left, somewhere behind us, I heard it, faint but clear, carried on the night air. Boom, boom, boom! A signal. The watcher, the one who had fired the bullet, was changing position. They were still here. They were still hunting me. I nodded once. I will stay. Club Hailstone was a jarring contrast to the alley. The public front was a whisper of dark velvet, low bass music, and the scent of expensive perfume. But Dante Lucero did not lead me through the crowd. He guided me with a firm hand on my back through a soundproof door marked private, past a bustling, immaculate kitchen smelling of thyme and roasting garlic, and into a room that was its absolute opposite. It was a study, warm and silent. The walls were lined with books, not just for show, but old, cracked leather volumes. A thick Persian rug absorbed our footsteps. It felt less like a fortress and more like a confessional. 3 people were waiting, and they did not look like the men from the alley. By the cold fireplace, a woman with a severe black bob and eyes that inventoried me in a single, sweeping glance stood with perfect posture. "Sarah Knight," Dante said, his voice dropping into a register of command, "my head of security." A young man hunched over a bank of humming monitors barely looked up, his fingers a blur across 3 keyboards. "Kaito-ri! Signals!" The third man was the most jarring. He was older, sitting in the deepest leather armchair, wearing a frayed tweed jacket over a priest's collar. He held a simple glass of water, and his eyes, though tired, were sharp and kind. "And Father Knox," Dante finished. "He keeps us centered." The priest inclined his head, a silent welcome. It was Kaito who spoke first, his voice raspy. "She is clean." He spun in his chair, not looking at me, but at Dante. He tossed the ancient burner phone onto the leather desk. The trap was personal, the signal string the time, the terminal, the waterway code. It was just enough to get you to move. Dante, not the whole organization. They wanted you at the glass warehouse, and they wanted this waitress to be the one who led you there. The word waitress felt like a shield I was rapidly losing. Dante turned his full attention to me. The immediate, life-threatening danger had passed, but this felt like a different kind of pressure. "The blue juniper," he said. "Think, who was there tonight, who was new, who was watching you?" I closed my eyes, forcing the adrenaline to recede, and replayed the shift. It is what I do. Waitressing is 90% observation. "The regulars," I said, visualizing the floor plan. "Mr. Henderson at table 4, the students at table 2, and one man, he was new, Elias." The memory sharpened. He sat at table 7, the corner booth. "What did he order?" Dante asked. "Just black coffee. But he asked strange questions." I looked at Dante. He asked what time we locked the doors. He asked if I took the orders, or if the kitchen did, and he kept looking at my order pad. Sarah Knight stepped forward, pulling a small notebook and a pen from her immaculate suit jacket. "Where is table 7? "The corner by the window, the one with the cracked vinyl." She sketched the diner's layout in 3 swift lines, her movements economical and precise. She drew a small X and tapped it. "The one spot with a clear view of the cash register and the counter where you keep your order book. But," she added, her eyes narrowing, "it is the main blind spot from the street." Dante's expression was grim. "We are going back." We drove back to the blue juniper in the deep, heavy silence that comes just before dawn. The sky was a dark, bruised purple. The street was empty. Sarah handled the diner's front door. The lock, which I'd always considered sturdy, clicked open in under 3 seconds with a thin piece of metal. The diner felt wrong. The air was stale. The familiar smell of coffee and grease overlaid with something cold. Kaito went straight to the small back office, disappearing for a moment. "Camera feed is wiped," he called out. "They were professionals. They took the physical hard drive." "They did not take everything," I said, the words surprising me. This was my territory. I walked behind the counter, the place I had stood 1,000 nights before. I knelt, pulled open the sticking bottom drawer under the register, and pushed aside the spare menus and boxes of sugar packets. There, beneath it all, were my order pads, the thick, old-fashioned kind. "The blue juniper is cheap," I said, standing up. "We still use carbon copy slips." I placed the stack on the counter. We spread the flimsy yellow sheets under the single, dim emergency light. Dante looked from the slips to me, his skepticism clear. I tapped the first one. Table 4. Henderson, 2 coffees, 1 black, 1 with cream, and a slice of blueberry pie. He taps his glass 3 times with his spoon when he needs a refill. He's nervous about his son. I pushed another slip forward. Table 2. Cheeseburger deluxe, no onions, extra pickles, and a diet soda. She was waiting for a phone call that she knew would not come. She kept checking her reflection in her phone. Then I found it. Elias, table 7, just black coffee, paid in cash. Dante was silent, a new kind of curiosity in his expression. He had seen my panic, my fear. This, however, was my strength. "You remember all of them?" he asked, his voice softer than I had heard it, just from what they ate. "I remember what they do," I corrected him, feeling a sudden, unfamiliar flicker of confidence. The food is just the excuse. People's habits betray them. He looked at me for a long moment. "Your memory is a weapon." "We need a better view," Sarah said, her practical voice cutting through the moment. She pointed at the ceiling. The roof. The roof access door was warped and stuck. Dante shouldered it open with a crack of splintering wood. The cold pre-dawn air hit us immediately. The city was spread out below, a sea of dark gray buildings, the first hint of light bruising the eastern horizon. One corner of the roof was taken up by a small, pathetic garden in wooden planters, mostly overgrown mint and thyme. Dante walked straight to the ledge, his coat flapping in the breeze. He scanned the opposite rooftops, his profile sharp against the skyline. "This is where they shot from," he stated. It was not a question. He motioned me over. I went, my legs feeling like jelly. "You need to learn to see the lines," he said. He stood just behind me. He was not touching me, but I could feel the heat radiating from him in the cold. A sniper does not pick a person. He picks a spot, a doorway, a window, an inevitable path. He pointed to a dark ledge on the office building across the street. That ledge, the ventilation shaft next to it. To steady me, or perhaps just to anchor me. He placed his hand on my shoulder. It was heavy and incredibly warm. The contact was not aggressive or even comforting. It was just present, solid. The warmth seeped through my thin sweater, a jolt that had nothing to do with fear. My heart, which had just started to settle, gave an annoying, stupid leap. A sharp thwack split the air. A piece of brick from the chimney, a yard to our left, exploded into red dust, a test shot, a warning. They were still here. They were watching. Down. Dante did not push. He pulled, his arm locked around my waist, a band of steel, and he lunged sideways, yanking us both out of the line of fire and into the only cover available. We crashed into the rooftop garden. I landed half on top of him, my hands braced on the solid muscle of his chest, my face inches from his. The air was knocked from my lungs, but the space was immediately filled with the sharp, clean, overwhelming scent of crushed mint leaves from the planter we had destroyed. We were frozen. I could feel the steady, powerful rhythm of his heart beneath my palm. It was a stark contrast to the wild, frantic beating of my own. His eyes, dark and unreadable, locked onto mine. He was not looking at me. He was looking into me. The moment stretched, holding us captive, the entire city, the sniper, the danger, all of it faded, leaving only the sound of our breathing and the smell of mint. He spoke, his voice a low whisper that vibrated through my hands and up my arms. "If you stay with me," he said, his words deliberate, "I promise you no one will touch you." He paused, and I saw the barest, fractional tilt of his mouth, except me, with permission. The sheer, absurd formality of it, the with permission in the middle of this madness, lying in a pile of dirt, smelling like a cocktail. It broke something in me. A sharp, half-hysterical laugh escaped my lips. It shattered the tension. I scrambled off him, suddenly aware of the damp soil soaking through my jeans. He rose in one fluid, graceful motion, completely unfazed. Before I could think of a single thing to say, a phone vibrated. Not the burner, his He pulled a sleek, modern device from his coat, his expression instantly hardening, the brief moment of levity vanishing. He listened, his gaze sweeping over the horizon, locking onto the dark shape of the Iron Bridge terminal by the water. He hung up. "Vesuvia just added a shadow container to the Midnight Manifest," he said. "What does that mean?" I asked, pulling my mint-stained sweater tighter. "It means," he said, his voice now like ice, "they are not just trying to frame you. They are moving something big, and they are using your blind date as the diversion to do it." We were back at Club Hailstone. The carbon copies spread across Dante's polished mahogany desk. The smell of mint from the rooftop was still clinging to my sweater, a strange, fresh counterpoint to the old paper and leather in the room. I was running my finger over the flimsy yellow sheets. Not just Elias's, but all of them. "This is not right," I murmured, lining up the orders from table 7. He did not just order one coffee, he ordered 5, one every half hour. He was establishing a presence, Sarah said, her arms crossed. "No," I said, my mind racing back to the diner, to the rhythm of the shift. He was timing something. "Look." I pointed to the slips. He was specific. First, a cinnamon coffee. We do not have cinnamon coffee. I brought him a black coffee with a cinnamon stick. Then, a rye toast, extra dark. Then an apple slice. Then a New York cheesecake. And finally, an espresso, single. The room was silent. Kaito, Dante, and Sarah were all watching me. "The first letter of each item to you," I said, my hand shaking slightly as I underlined them. C-R-A-N-E. He was spelling a name. Dante Lucero went very still. He looked from the slips to me, his eyes dark with a sudden, cold understanding. "Elias Crane," he said, the name sounding like an indictment. "He is a commissioner on the Harbor Commission, a shell organization for illegal frontages." "He is the one trying to trap you?" I asked. "He is the one," Dante confirmed. "But he is not just trapping me, he's trapping you." Kaito spun around from his monitors, his face pale in the electronic glow. "Dante, the feds just went public. The Federal Organized Threat Unit, FODU, has opened a formal investigation into Lucero Syndicate operations, effective this morning." The pieces clicked into place with horrifying speed. "The port code," Dante said, his voice dangerously quiet. "Crane needed a leak. He needed a civilian, someone clean to be the source. He gives the feds a reliable source, a waitress from the Juniper who suddenly has access to high-level shipping codes. He builds a case against you," Sarah finished, "and he uses Miss Vale as the leverage to sink it." "He gets worse," Kaito interrupted. "The warehouse, Glass Quarter, number 17. I have been scanning its network. It is not just a meeting place. It is a fully wired recording setup. Microphones, multiple cameras, high definition. They are not planning to kill you there. Dante, they are planning to film you. They want to film you making what looks like a forbidden transaction with the Vesuvia Circle." Dante's face was a mask of cold fury. "He's trying to start a war and make me look like the aggressor. We are pulling out. The operation is canceled." "No," I said. All 3 of them looked at me. It was the first time I had ever contradicted a man like Dante Lucero. "You cannot cancel," I said, surprised at the steadiness in my own voice. "If you do not show, they will know you were tipped, and who tipped you, me. They will just shift their focus and come for me, and this time, they will not miss." "She is right," Sarah said, her gaze sharp. "They cannot leave a loose end this large." "So, what do you propose, Miss Vale?" Dante asked, a dangerous edge to his voice. We walk into a camera-filled room. "We changed the narrative, Val," I said, the plan forming out of pure, desperate adrenaline. "They are expecting a dawn. They are expecting a secret meeting. They are not expecting a delivery. I will go. I will put my uniform back on. I will walk in there, not as a source, but as a waitress from the Blue Juniper, hired to serve a late-night private party. I will bring a tray of espresso while I am serving, Sarah." I looked at the security chief. "You swapped the memory cards on the cameras." Sarah's eyes widened. Then a slow, appreciative smile touched her lips. Steganography. We do not just take their footage. We replace it. We film Crane. It is too dangerous, Dante said. It is less dangerous than running, I countered. I know how to be invisible. It is my job. The next hour was the strangest of my life. Sarah taught me 3 silent hand signals: danger, clear, and out now. Kaito gave me a tiny earpiece that just looked like a hearing aid, but it was Dante who gave me the most crucial lesson. He took me into the club's main bar, now empty and silent in the gray light. He pointed to the long mirror behind the bar, which reflected the glass doors of the entrance. The problem is not light. It is shadow. He said, if you walk past that light source, your shadow will hit that glass. He pointed to the door, and anyone watching from the street will see your silhouette, even if they cannot see you. He stood in the path, walked toward me. I did. As I passed the light, my shadow stretched and hit the door. Again, he said, this time, watch the reflection. Move with the light, not against it. Keep your profile low. Angle your body. He showed me a fluid movement that was almost a dance. He did not seem to cast a shadow at all. I tried. I failed. I tried again. After 20 minutes, he finally nodded. You learn fast. I have to, I said, my heart hammering from the proximity. I needed one more thing. I had to go back to my apartment. I had to find Mira. Dante and Sarah went with me. We did not use the front door. We went up the fire escape and in through the window Dante had used to get me out. My apartment was a wreck. They had been thorough. Cushions were slashed, drawers emptied. Mira was in the corner, by the kitchen, crying silently. She thought I was one of them. Aria, she whispered, her face streaked with tears. I did not know. I swear I did not know. Know what, Mira, I asked, my voice flat. The blind date guy, he paid me, she choked out. He paid me $2,000. He said it was just a prank. He said he was too shy to ask you out, and he wanted to give you the burner phone to make it mysterious, like a game. I needed the money for rent. I thought it was just a stupid joke. $2,000, the price of my life. I felt a cold, hard anger rise in my throat. I wanted to scream at her, but I looked at her, huddled on the linoleum, terrified. And all I saw was my friend, the friend who had brought me soup when I had the flu, who had covered my shifts, who was just as stuck in North Cross as I was. I pulled her to her feet. Get your coat. Get your passport. You are leaving. You are going to go to the bus station and take the first bus heading south, and you will not call me, text me, or contact me until I find you. Do you understand? She just nodded, sobbing. I gave her all the cash I had in my wallet, about $300. Go, now. Use the back alley. She ran. I stood there, watching her go, the anger replaced by a vast, cold emptiness. I turned around. Dante was standing in the doorway, his expression unreadable. He had watched the entire exchange. He had seen my anger, and he had seen the moment I let it go, the moment I chose to protect her. His eyes, usually so hard, seemed to... Soften was not the right word. They seemed to focus, to see me in a way he had not before. She betrayed you, he stated. She was scared and greedy. People make bad choices. And you forgive that. I do not have time not to, I said. We have a warehouse to visit. I walked past him, toward the door. In the narrow hallway, my hand brushed his as I passed. It was the barest, most accidental contact, but it was not. We both froze. His fingers, long and warm, grazed the back of my hand. A jolt, sharp and electric, shot up my arm, making the hair stand on end. It was not a friendly touch. It was not a threatening touch. It was a touch of pure, unadulterated awareness. It lasted a second too long, maybe 2. I pulled my hand away as if I had been burned. He dropped his jaw tightening. Neither of us said a word. The air in the hallway was suddenly thick, charged with something far more dangerous than the men waiting for us in the glass quarter. We both looked away, and the moment was over, leaving an awkward, thrumming silence in its wake. I had to change first. My mint-stained waitress uniform was not going to work. Sarah provided a fresh one from a locker I had not known existed. Crisp black pants, a white shirt, and a new blue juniper apron. It felt like armor. Warehouse number 17 smelled like rust, old oil, and the river. It was a vast, cold space. Kaido, through my tiny earpiece, was a whisper in my head. 3 cameras, 2 low, 1 high on the rafters. They are live. Go. I walked in, my hand steady on the heavy silver tray I had insisted on bringing. 6 espresso cups, a small pot of steamed milk, and a shaker of cocoa powder, the one I had used in the alley. My waitress training kicked in. My expression went neutral, my movements efficient. Elias Crane was standing in the center of the room, under a single, harsh industrial light. He was not alone. 2 men stood by the doors, and another man held a professional camera, not a security camera, aimed right at the entrance. He was the Vesuvius Circle photographer. "Right on time," Crane said, his smile thin. "Just set it down." He looked past me, at the empty doorway. He was waiting for Dante. 2 low cams are wired to the main feed. Kaido's voice murmured. "Sarah is moving on the high cam now. I am going to create a loop. Stand by." The overhead lights flickered, buzzed, and then died, plunging the warehouse into near darkness, save for the single spotlight on Crane. "What is this?" Crane snapped. "Power fluctuation," Kaido whispered. "The high cam is out of the network. Sarah is swapping the card. Now." The lights hummed back to life. The photographer adjusted his lens. "The footage they are getting," Kaido said, a note of triumph in his voice, "is no longer this room. They are getting Sarah's pre-recorded footage, a beautiful, high-definition shot of Crane taking a briefcase full of cash from a known Vesuvia associate. The narrative, Miss Vale, has been altered." Crane looked at his watch, then at the empty door. His patience was gone. He seemed to realize that Dante was not late. He was not coming. Then his eyes met mine, and he saw something not fear, but focus. He realized the trick. "The girl," he snarled. "She's the only one who came. It is a setup. Grab her." The 2 men by the door moved. The photographer raised his camera, documenting my capture. I did not run. I grabbed the cocoa shaker. The first man reached for me. I flung the contents directly at the photographer's lens and the second man's face. A cloud of fine, dark powder filled the air. The photographer yelled as his expensive lens was coated. The second man choked, blinded. Crane wiped the dust from his suit, enraged. "You stupid ma!" He never finished the sentence. A sound came from above. A shadow detached itself from the high rafters. Dante Lucero dropped into the spotlight. He descended on a dark gray anchor line, his long coat flaring. He hit the ground in a silent crouch. The man I had blinded was still rubbing his eyes. Dante moved past him, a blur of focused violence, using the man's momentum to send him into the wall. The photographer tried to swing his camera. Dante simply took it from him and shattered it on the floor. The third man, by the door, pulled a gun. Dante was already there, his hand clamping the weapon, a sharp twist, and the man was disarmed and on his knees. It took less than 5 seconds. Crane stared, his trap in ruins. Dante did not look at him. He looked at me. "Arya, go." He grabbed my hand. We ran. We burst through the side exit door and into the sudden, shocking cold of the North Cross night. Rain was falling, a deluge that instantly plastered my hair to my face. We ran 2 blocks, my waitress shoes slipping on the wet pavement, before Dante pulled me into a dark, recessed doorway. "Are you hurt?" His voice was rough, breathless. "No," I panted. "I do not think so." He raised his hand. His fingers were warm, his touch surprisingly gentle as he brushed the wet hair from my face. "You have a scratch," he said. "A piece of wood from the door. Maybe." He did not pull his hand away. He cupped my cheek, his thumb brushing the small graze, the city, the rain, the danger. It all went silent. His eyes were not on the scratch. They were on my lips. I do not remember the drive. My adrenaline was fading, leaving a shivering, electric awareness in its place. We went to a place called the Beacon Loft, a penthouse space high above the city, all glass and steel, the storm raging outside. We just stood in the center of the dark room, the city lights a blurred constellation below. The only sound was the rain hammering the glass and the sound of our breathing, fast and shallow, chasing each other in the air. He took a step. I did not move. "Aria," he said, his voice low, a request. I nodded once. He raised his hand again, as he had in the alley, but this time he was slower. He touched my hair, his fingers tracing the wet strand. "May I?" It was the permission he had promised. I just nodded again. He leaned in. The kiss was not frantic. It was slow and deep and deliberate. It tasted of rain and the lingering, dusty sweetness of the cocoa. His other hand, warm and strong, found the small of my back, resting there, connecting. I leaned into the touch, my hands coming up to rest on his chest, feeling the solid, steady beat of his heart. His hand on my back slid up, pulling me closer, erasing the last inch of space between us. He deepened the kiss, and it became something new, not just relief, but hunger. My fingers tightened on his shirt, my jacket, soaked and heavy, slipped unheeded from one shoulder, then the other, landing with a soft sound on the floor. He broke the kiss only to move to my jaw, his lips tracing a line, his breath hot against my skin. "Aria," he whispered, my name a prayer against my throat. I tilted my head back, my heart pounding in a rhythm that matched the rain. The lights from the city cast a warm, golden glow across the room, catching the moisture on his eyelashes, the intensity in his eyes. This was not a dawn. This was a man. He pulled me tighter, his body a shield against the storm outside and the one inside me. We were two people who had stepped out of the shadows, and in this one moment found the only solid ground in the world. He kissed me again, and I kissed him back. The windows, fogged by the sudden heat in the room, blurred the city lights. This was trust. When I woke, the storm had passed. I was on a couch, covered by a cashmere blanket. I was still in my clothes. I smelled coffee. Dante was standing by the floor-to-ceiling window. He was in his shirt sleeves, his coat from last night draped over the back of a chair. He turned as I sat up. He held out a steaming mug. I took it, my fingers brushing his. He maintained a respectful distance. "Last night," he said, his back to the light, it was not because of the storm. It was not because of the warehouse. It was because of you." I looked down into the dark coffee. My voice was shaky. "I am not a break in the fighting, Dante. I do not want to be the quiet space between your wars." He stepped forward then, into the light. His eyes were clear. He reached out and tucked a dry strand of hair behind my ear. "You are not the quiet space," he said. "You are the heartbeat, the one that makes me pause, the one that makes me stop at the right time." Before I could process what that meant, his personal phone buzzed on the counter. He looked at it, and the peace of the morning shattered. The mask of the dawn slid back into place. His face was granite. "What is it?" I asked, pulling the blanket tighter. "It is Fotu," he said, his voice flat and cold. "They have made their move. They just announced a full-scale investigation into Club Hailstone." He turned the phone screen toward me. The headline on the news alert was stark. "They have arrested Rook Navarro," Dante said. "My right-hand man. They framed him." Rook Navarro's arrest was a declaration of war. It was not just an arrest. It was a kidnapping by a federal agency. Dante's cold fury was a tangible thing, a drop in temperature at the Beacon Loft. Kaito worked for an hour, his fingers flying, and finally looked up, his face grim. "Crane is not celebrating," Kaito said. "He is solidifying his victory. He's at the Orpheum Conservatory tonight, a fundraiser. He is scheduled to receive a data chip from a Vesuvia courier. It is his payment, and a copy of all the evidence they have fabricated against Rook." "We are going," Dante said. It was not a question. It is a black tie gala. Dante, Sarah said, her voice practical. Security will be photo, not just private. They will be looking for you. They will be looking for Don Lucero, Dante said, his gaze shifting to me. They will not be looking for me. And what about me, I asked, my voice small. A slow, dangerous smile touched Dante's lips. You, Aria, are our way in. The Orpheum Conservatory was a different world. It was a massive structure of glass and white marble, built to house exotic plants and the city's elite. The air smelled of damp earth, night-blooming jasmine, and old money. I was no longer Aria Vale, Waitress. Sarah had spent 3 hours transforming me. My hair was swept up in a complex twist. I was wearing a simple, brutally elegant black dress, and in my ear, Kaito's voice was a comforting whisper. My credentials, he assured me, identified me as a freelance sommelier, hired last minute to consult on the pairings. Dante was unrecognizable. He wore a perfectly tailored tuxedo, his hair slightly different, his posture relaxed. He was not the Don of the Shadows. He was a wealthy benefactor, a patron of the arts. His smile, when he used it, was disarming, dosed with the perfect amount of lethal charm. My job was simple. Use my memory. I walked the floor, a wine glass in hand, my new identity, my shield. The gentleman at table 3, I murmured to a harried event captain. He is a collector. He finds French reds ostentatious. Switch him to the Argentinian Malbec. And the woman he is with is allergic to sulfites. Get her the organic Prosecco. My observations, once used for tips, were now weapons of infiltration. Dante, meanwhile, moved through the crowd, a shark in a school of fish, shaking hands, making donations, his eyes never stopping. We met in the glass garden, a vast atrium where the music from the ballroom was a muted pulse. They are moving, Dante murmured, taking my hand. The courier is here. How do we get the chip? I whispered. We do not. Kaito does. He pulled me onto the small stone dance floor. We just need to provide a distraction. He drew me close. His hand, warm and firm, settled on the bare skin of my back. It was not a lover's touch. It was an anchor, a point of absolute stillness in the swirling, glittering crowd. We moved slowly, a silent conversation. His hand was a shield, keeping me steady. We were a team, a pair of thieves in plain sight. Sarah has the security wing, he whispered, his lips near my ear. She is swapping the access badges for the archives. And the chip? Crane is not carrying it. He's having it downloaded directly to a hard drive in the archive room. Kaito is redirecting the signal. Redirecting where? Dante nodded toward the far end of the garden, where a beautiful, unmanned grand piano sat. Kaito is a musician, he said, with a ghost of a smile. He has routed the data transfer to the piano's internal sensors. The only way to complete the download is to play the sequence. My blood ran cold. Play what? Kaito has the file. He's sending the notes to your earpiece right now. He spun me, a slow, graceful turn. It is a nocturne. Can you play? I took lessons as a kid, I said, my voice shaky. Good, because every key you press will be one more bit of data. Play it. I walked to the piano, my legs unsteady. I sat down. The keys were cool ivory. Kaito, I whispered. I am here, Aria. His voice came, warm and reassuring. Just play what you hear. Do not stop. A simple, haunting melody began in my ear. I put my fingers to the keys. I played. I let my training take over. My memory of the notes, the feel. The music was beautiful, melancholic. I was downloading a federal conspiracy by playing Chopin in a greenhouse. I was on the last phrase when a shadow fell over the keys. I looked up, Elias Crane. He was standing in the archway of a mirrored corridor just off the garden. He was not looking at the piano. He was looking at me. He knew. That was lovely, he said, his voice slick. He beckoned. A moment, Miss Vale. I believe we have a mutual friend we need to discuss. I stood. Dante was gone, vanished back into the crowd. I was alone with him. I followed him into the corridor. a long hall lined with antique mirrors, my reflection and his, repeated into infinity. Aria Vale, he said, tasting the name. The waitress. You have become his mascot. I do not know what you mean. Oh, I think you do. He stepped closer, his smile vanishing. He's using you, a simple girl, a sob story for the media, but I have an offer, a way out. A deal. He goes down, photo is already on him. You just need to give them the push, a televised interview. You tell them how he threatened you, how he forced you. You become the victim he made you. Why would I do that? Because, Crane said, his voice dropping, of Mira, your friend, the one who set you up. She's at a bus station in a city she does not know, with no money. She's very vulnerable. I can make her safe, or I can make her disappear. Help me. Aria, and your friend is on a plane home tomorrow. Refuse, and you will never see her again. I stared at our reflections, the two of us repeated over and over. I let the fear show on my face, the indecision. I let him see me waver. I need to think, I stammered, stalling for time. You do not have... The lights in the corridor went out, all of them, plunging us into absolute, disorienting darkness. What? Crane yelped. I did not wait. I heard a sound, a zip and a thud. A heavy body hit the floor. Dante's hand was on my arm. He's not dead, just sleeping. Go now. We ran, not back to the garden. We heard shouts, security. Dante pulled me toward a service exit. Roof, he said. We burst onto the high domed roof of the conservatory. The wind was fierce, ripping at my hair, the city lights a dizzying spectacle below. We were trapped. Dante, I panted, fear finally catching up. He pointed to the massive flagpole at the edge of the dome. The thick decorative flag lines were bundled at its base. He grabbed one, testing the weight, and secured it. We were going down. He wrapped the line around his waist and then around me, pulling me flush against his chest. Hold on, he said. I wrapped my arms around his neck, burying my face against his tuxedo. I was half wild with fear, half fascinated by the sheer audacity of it. Radio silence, he whispered, and then, to stop me from speaking, to keep me silent, he kissed me. It was not the kiss from the loft. It was not slow or tender. It was hard and fast and absolute. It was a kiss that said, I am in control. Do not speak. Trust me. It was over in a second. Then we were off the edge, dropping into the night air. Later, back at the loft, Kaito worked his magic on the data. The chip, downloaded through the piano, was a treasure trove. He did not just frame Rook, Kaito said, his eyes wide. He is framing all of you. The data was clear. Vesuvia and Crane had staged the entire Iron Bridge incident. They created the shadow container to make it look like Dante was breaking the truce, a truce brokered by a mythical Council of Houses. Crane's plan was to use the evidence to convince this council that the Lucero Syndicate had gone rogue, giving them the authorization to dismantle Dante's entire organization, with Fotu as their legal muscle. They used me to start a war, I whispered. They did, Dante said, his voice like flint. He was staring at the last line of a decoded email. We have the proof, I said, trying to find the victory. We can clear Rook. We have most of the proof, Dante corrected me. He looked up, and his eyes were the coldest I had ever seen them. The chip confirms the setup, but it is missing the most important piece, the original port code, the one from the burner phone. What does that mean? It means, Dante said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper, that Elias Crane did not get that code from the outside. Someone in my house gave it to him. The morning after the conservatory, the world fell apart. Rook Navarro's arrest was not a quiet affair. It was a spectacle. Fotu, the Federal Organized Threat Unit, made sure of it. They leaked the arrest to every news outlet in North Cross. By noon, Rook's face, angry and cuffed, was on every television screen. And so was mine. The headline was splashed across the bottom of the screen: Aria Vale Waitress becomes Dawn's mistress. They used a grainy, long-lens photo I did not even know existed, a shot of Dante and me on the rooftop of the Blue Juniper, his hand on my shoulder. They paired it with a worse one, a blurry image of me at the window of the beacon loft. It was cheap, ugly, and effective. I saw a brief clip of Mira. Reporters had found her, cornered her at the bus station before she could leave. She looked small and terrified, her eyes wide with a panic I recognized. She stammered no comment and ran, dropping her suitcase. The media pressure was suffocating. The second blow came not from the news, but from the silence of the club. A new burner phone was slipped under the door of the safe room, delivered by a staff member who refused to meet my eyes. I flipped it open. One anonymous message. Lucero is using you to launder his image. He leaks a little romance, the dangerous Dawn and the innocent waitress, and suddenly his federal investigation looks like a witch hunt. You are not his partner. Aria, you are his press strategy. Attached was a photo. It was from the beacon loft, the night of the storm. It was me, asleep on the couch, and Dante, his expression unreadable, in the act of placing the cashmere blanket over me. It had been an intimate, gentle moment, but seeing it now, taken by a third party, it looked staged, calculated. It felt like a violation. My rational mind knew it was a lie, a tool sent by Crane or Vesuvia to divide us. But doubt is a poison. It does not need a large wound to enter. I found Dante in the study, the one that smelled of old books. He was on the phone, his voice sharp and cold, coordinating a legal defense for Rook. He hung up when he saw me, the tension in his shoulders visible. I held up the burner phone. The media, the photos, this strategy. Is it yours? He went still. Aria, this is not the time. It is the only time, I insisted, my voice shaking, though I fought to control it. Was I a diversion at the warehouse, or am I the diversion now? If any of this, if that night at the loft was just a move on your board, you have to tell me. You tell me right now. I needed him to deny it. I needed him to be angry, to tell me I was being absurd. I watched his face. I saw the denial flash in his dark eyes. He opened his mouth, and then he closed it. He hesitated. It was only a second, a single, agonizing beat of silence. But in that second, my world fractured. What I could not know was that he was protecting a different plan, a complex and dangerous maneuver to extract Rook, a plan that depended on absolute secrecy. What I saw was a man who could not, or would not, answer the most important question I had ever asked. That is the answer, I whispered. My stomach felt like it was full of cold lead. I turned and walked out. I walked past Sarah, who was standing in the hall. Aria, do not be stupid, she warned, her eyes sharp. It is dangerous out there. I did not care. I walked out of Club Hailstone, out of the velvet and the security, and back into the real world. I walked all the way back to Ash Harbor. I do not know what I was thinking, only that I needed to be in my own space, in the apartment that was mine, to breathe air that did not smell like him. My apartment was cold. The splintered wood on the doorframe was a stark reminder of how this all began. I sat on my couch, the one with the lumpy springs, and stared at the wall. I felt hollowed out. Then I heard it. Boom, boom, boom. 3 heavy, measured knocks. My heart stopped, and then it flooded with a relief so powerful it made me dizzy. He had come. He had followed me. The hesitation, the plan, none of it mattered. He was here. I ran to the door, fumbling with the new cheap chain I had installed. Dante. I looked through the peephole. It was not Dante. It was 3 men in dark blue tactical vests, the letters FOTU stamped in white, the wardens. They held a warrant in one hand and a battering ram in the other. FOTU, open the door! The first slam hit the wood, and the frame groaned. The kitchen window shattered. I screamed. Spinning around, Sarah Knight landed on my floor in a shower of glass, rolling to her feet from the fire escape. They used the knock, she hissed, her face a mask of fury. They knew! They were listening! Move! The battering ram hit the door again, and the wood splintered. Sarah did not wait. She grabbed my arm, yanking me toward the window. Go, go! We scrambled out onto the cold metal of the fire escape, climbing toward the roof. The rain started again. A cold, miserable drizzle that cut through my thin shirt. We ran across the rooftops, Sarah moving with a liquid grace, me slipping and stumbling on the wet tar. We stopped 2 blocks away, crouching behind a large ventilation unit, looking down at my building, which was now flooded with flashing blue lights. He did not tell you, Sarah said. It was not a question. His plan for Rook, he locked it down, he told no one. Kaito's voice crackled in her earpiece, frantic. Sarah, he's moving. Dante is going to the Council of Houses. He's going alone. Crane is there. He's showing them the doctored footage from the warehouse right now. The council is wavering. Sarah got me to a nondescript hotel room, a new safe house. She left me with a small bag of clothes, a new burner phone, and one other thing. Dante wanted you to have these, she said, dropping my stack of carbon copy order slips from the blue juniper onto the stained bedspread. He said your memory was a weapon. Maybe he is right. She left. I was alone. Dante was facing a council of his peers, unarmed and accused. I was a fugitive. I looked at the slips, the flimsy yellow paper. I thought about what to choose, love or survival. My hands were shaking. I picked up the stack and spread them out. My eyes went back to the slips from table 7. Elias Crane. Cinnamon, rye, apple, New York, espresso. But I saw something I had missed before, in the small, blank notes column on the side, where I sometimes scribbled reminders. There were marks. They were not my usual shorthand. Next to cinnamon, a dot and a dash. Next to rye, a dash and 3 dots. My breath caught. It was not just a scribble. I grabbed a pen from the hotel desk. Dot dash. A dash dot dot dot. B. I translated them, my heart hammering. It was Morse code. Crane had not just been spelling his name. He had been dictating. With every dish he ordered, he had given me a letter, forcing my hand to write a message I did not even understand. The final message was a string of coordinates, the coordinates for the Iron Bridge terminal. He had made me write the leak. But then I saw it. The proof. At the top of the slip, the automatic timestamp from the order machine. I knew exactly when he gave me that order. I had been arguing with the kitchen staff about the espresso machine. I was in plain sight of the entire diner. I just had to prove when I wrote it. The street cameras outside the Juniper. If I could match the timestamp on this slip to the footage from the street camera. I could prove I wrote this code hours before the leak supposedly happened. I could prove Crane was the source. Not me. I could save us. I still had the black metal card Dante had given me, the one from that first night. It was cold and heavy in my hand. Sarah had said it was a one-time, untraceable audio link. I pressed the small, invisible stud on the side. I heard nothing for a full 10 seconds, just the faint hiss of an open line. Then, his voice. It was distant, strained, and I could hear the low murmur of other men in the background. Aria. Dante, I have it, I said, my voice low and urgent. The proof. Crane. He fed me the code. I did not know I was writing it. He did it at the diner. Another silence. Longer this time. I heard a muffled voice. Not Dante's. Say, Lucero, your time is running thin. Then Dante's voice. Back on the line, hard as steel. He's presenting his case now. The doctored footage from the warehouse. The council is listening. But I can prove he lied, I insisted. The timestamps, the street cameras. I can clear my name. I can clear you. He knows you are the loose end, Dante said, his voice flat. He will not let you walk away. A pause. Aria, he has offered a trade. Rook, for you. My blood went cold. Do not, I said, my voice fierce. Do not even think about it. I heard him take a breath. If you still have any trust left, he said, his voice dropping so low I could barely hear it. If you still believe in anything from the last 2 days, come to the Iron Bridge terminal, midnight. The line went dead. I had a choice: run or run toward the fire. First, I had to fix what I had broken. I found Mira. Sarah's network had tracked her to a different suburban bus station, hiding in a 24-hour donut shop. I did not go alone. I called the only person I knew who represented Sanctuary. I called Father Knox. He met me there, his old tweed jacket smelling faintly of pipe tobacco and old books. Mira was huddled in a booth, her face pale. When she saw me, she burst into tears. "Arya, I am so sorry." I did not have time for anger. I pulled her into a hug, tight and fierce. "We will be sorry later," I whispered, my voice rough. "Right now, we are going to live." I looked at Father Knox. "Can you—" "She will be safe," he said, his kind eyes looking not at me, but at something over my shoulder, as if guarding my back. "I will take her to the parish. No one will find her there. Go, child. Do what you must." I ran. My next stop was not as holy. I walked into the downtown municipal security office, the public hub for the city's street cameras. The night shift was quiet, the air stale. A single, bored-looking guard sat behind a high counter, his eyes glued to a tiny television. I knew him, not by name, but by his order. "Kevin," I said, reading the name tag. He looked up, his eyes bleary, then widening in recognition. "Blue Juniper," he said, smiling. "I miss your espresso. This machine—" He motioned to a dripping pot in the corner. "Tastes like batteries." "Kevin," I said, leaning on the counter, channeling every bit of tired waitress charm I had. "I have a huge problem. A customer, a really important one, left his wallet at the diner 2 nights ago. He says he thinks he dropped it on the sidewalk out front. I am trying to prove to my boss it was not my fault. Is there any way you could just check the street cam just for a minute?" He sighed, looking at his screen. "That is a lot of paperwork, ma'am." "I know," I said, "and I am so sorry. It was table 9. I remember, because I was bringing them their check. I think it was around 9:30. My boss will kill me." 9:30? He swiveled in his chair. He was a man bored to death, and I had just given him a story. He typed, "Blue Juniper 2 nights ago." The feed spooled up on his monitor. My heart was in my throat. Yeah, I was at the counter, and then I went to table 9, the one by the window. I think that is when he left, around then. "Let's see," Kevin said. The footage was grainy, black and white, but clear. There was the Blue Juniper, and there, through the front window, was me. I was visible. My white apron a bright spot, walking from the counter, holding a tray, and setting it down at table 9. "That is it," I said. "Right there. Can you see the timestamp?" 9:37 p., he said. "Yeah, I see you, but I do not see anyone drop a wallet." "That is all I needed," I said. Grabbing a pen and a slip of paper from his desk, I scribbled down the exact time. "Thank you. Kevin, you are a lifesaver. When this is over, espresso is on me for life." "I am holding you to that," he called after me as I ran out the door. I met Sarah and Kaito under the North Cross steel bridge, the sound of the late-night train rumbling overhead. The air smelled like rust and the river. "He is at the terminal," Kaito said, his laptop open on the hood of a car. "Dante is there, Crane is there, and Fodu has set up a perimeter. They are calling it a hostage negotiation. They think Dante is trading Rook for you." "Good," I said, my voice hard. "Let them think that." I handed Kaito the slip of paper. 9:37 p.m., 2 nights ago. That is when I was at table 9. Now, look at this. I handed him the carbon slip, the one with the Morse code. He looked at the order's timestamp, 9:12 p.m. That is when Crane started the order. "But he did not finish it," I said. "He added the last item, the espresso, right before he left. Check the main file. What time did Fotu say the leak happened?" Kaito's fingers flew. According to their warrant, the breach was logged at 9:45 p.m. That is when the code was activated. Sarah saw it first. 9:12, she said, her voice a low growl of appreciation. "The code is written. 9:37. She pointed to the file I had just gotten. You are on street cam, serving a different table. 9:45, the leak happens, but the code was already in my apron pocket. I finished. I wrote it, but I never sent it. I never even knew what it was. Crane wrote his own leak, and he used me to do it. Then he activated it. "This is it," Kaido said, his voice breaking with excitement. "This is the whole thing. It clears you. It implicates Crane." He saved the new file, the order slip, the Morse code, the timestamp, and the street cam footage onto a single, small data chip. He handed it to me. "How do you get this to them?" I looked at the chip. Small, metal, easy to find, easy to lose. I took the new burner phone Sarah had given me and typed a message to the only number in it, Dante's. "Proof is solid. I can clear you, but Crane will expect us. He needs to end this on the ferry deck. He will be watching for a handoff." I waited. The seconds ticked by. The phone buzzed. 2 words. "I trust you." I looked at Kaido. "Give me a flare, one of the bright red ones, and I need a straw." "A what?" "A metal drinking straw," I said, "like the ones we use at the club." In the back of the car, I changed. Sarah had packed a simple black dress, something elegant but simple, something that would not stand out, but would not look out of place. I slipped the data chip into the thin, hollow, brushed metal straw. If I was searched, it was just part of my kit, my eco-friendly, reusable straw. I slipped on a pair of soft-soled shoes, easy to run in. I caught my reflection in the car's darkened window. The woman looking back was not the waitress from the Blue Juniper. Her eyes were hard. Her face was set. The fear was still there, a cold knot in my stomach, but it was not in charge anymore. Tonight, I was not the bait. I was the trap. Midnight, 12 o'clock. The Iron Bridge terminal was a ghost station, swallowed by a thick, wet fog that rolled in off the river. The air was heavy, smelling of salt, rust, and the deep, cold water. The only light came from the tall sodium lamps, casting a sickly, pressurized yellow glow that did not penetrate the mist, but only made it thicker. A single ferry, docked at the far end, let out a long, mournful horn, a sound like a tear in the fabric of the night. I walked onto the open deck of the loading area. My soft-soled shoes were silent on the wet metal. I was carrying a small, round, silver serving tray. On it sat a single, brushed metal straw. He emerged first, Elias Crane, walking out of the fog as if he were made of it. He was not smiling. Behind him, 2 photo wardens, in his pocket, dragged a third man. Rook Navarro. His hands were bound and a dark bruise stained his jaw, but his eyes were pure, defiant steel. He was the bait. "Right on time, Miss Vale," Crane called out, his voice unnaturally loud in the damp air. "The condemned are always so punctual." Then, a sound from above, the rattle of a metal staircase. From the high steel girders of the bridge itself, 2 figures descended, Sarah, a shadow in black, and Dante, his long coat stark against the mist. They did not take the main ramp. They took the high ground, flanking us, creating a perfect 3-point triangle of death. "Dante," Crane said with a mock bow, "you came, all this, for a simple waitress." "Give him the code," Dante ordered, his voice flat, ignoring Crane. His eyes were locked on me. They were not angry, they were steady. I took a step toward him, my tray held out. This was the moment. Crane watched, his hand moving inside his jacket, ready. He thought I was the loyal pawn, delivering the final piece of incriminating evidence, the port code to my master. "Just give it to him," Crane urged, his voice oily. "It does not matter. I have everything I need. I just need the clip of the exchange. And the girl." I stopped, halfway between the 2 men. "Aria," Dante said, his voice dropping, a warning. I turned my head, just enough to look at Crane. "The clip and the girl," I repeated. "That is all you needed." I took the flare from the waistband of my dress. I struck the cap against the metal deck, a sharp hiss, and then a blinding, Violent explosion of red light. The fog turned to blood. I drew a wide circle in the air, the signal Kaito had demanded. "Now!" I screamed. The fog came alive, heavy, thudding footsteps from all sides. The Fotu wardens, the real ones, the ones not on Crane's payroll, burst onto the deck, their tactical gear dark, their weapons up. They had been waiting for my signal. Their guns centered on one target. Don Lucero hands where I can see them, a new man. The Fotu captain shouted. "You are arresting the wrong man," I yelled back. The captain turned to me, his face confused. I grabbed the metal straw from the tray. "He is Elias Crane. He is the one who leaked the port code. He is the one who framed us." I threw the straw. It clattered to the wet deck at the captain's feet. "The data chip is inside. That is your proof." Crane's face went white. "She is lying, seize them." "He is the liar," I shouted. "Kaito, now!" A brilliant white light cut through the red fog. A high-powered projector, mounted by Kaito on the bridge, snapped to life. The image hit the broad, flat side of the docked ferry. It was the street cam footage from the blue Juniper. Grainy, black and white, but unmistakable. "Look," I pointed. "There I am. At table 9. Check the timestamp. 9:37 p.m. The Fotu captain stared. "Your warrant says the port code was activated at 9:45. I continued, my voice echoing. "But he made me write it. Kaito, show them the slip." The image changed, the carbon copy, the Morse code, the timestamp from the kitchen printer, 9:12 p.m. "He fed me the code at 9:12. I cried. "It was in my apron pocket, unread, when I was at table 9. He framed me. He activated the code himself." The wardens, one by one, turned their weapons from Dante toward Crane. Crane saw it. The trap had snapped shut. He did not run. He did not surrender. He pulled his gun. He did not aim for the wardens. He aimed for me. "Aria!" Dante yelled. He was moving before the word was out. He was not fast enough to stop the shot, only to intercept it. He lunged, a desperate cross-body tackle. The crack of the gunshot was flat and ugly. Dante grunted, a sharp, choked sound, as he slammed into me. The bullet, meant for my chest, tore through the thick muscle of his shoulder. We hit the deck hard, skidding on the wet metal. Crane raised his arm for a second shot. I was on the ground, my head spinning, but my hand still held the silver tray. I did not think. I reacted. I swung the tray in a low, vicious arc, smashing it into Crane's wrist. I heard a wet, snapping sound. His gun clattered onto the deck. He howled. Before he could recover, Sarah dropped from the railing above, landing on his back, driving him face first into the metal. She had a zip tie in her hand before he had even stopped bouncing. It was over. "One more thing," a voice said. "Kaito." The projector flared again. This time, it was the footage from the warehouse. We saw Crane, the doctored footage Sarah had planted, and then Kaito applied a filter, and the steganography became visible, a hidden Vesuvia circle signature, embedded in the very data Crane had planned to use against Dante. The bullet was a through and through. The Fotu captain, his face grim with the realization of his error, immediately called for his own medics as his wardens cuffed Elias Crane, the Council of Houses, who Kaito confirmed had been watching the entire exchange on a secure, private live stream, voted unanimously to preserve the Lucero Syndicate. Rook Navarro, his hands finally unbound, just nodded once to Dante, a lifetime of loyalty in the simple gesture. The fog, the red light, the shouting, it all faded. I was on my knees on the cold, wet metal deck of the Iron Bridge terminal, my hands pressed hard against the entry and exit wounds on Dante's shoulder. The rain was steady now, washing the blood from my fingers. He was looking at me, his face pale, but his eyes were clear. He managed a weak, pained smile. "I told you," he whispered, his voice rough. "No one gets to touch you." The Iron Bridge. It had been the trap. And now, it was the place where we had finally escaped. 3 months later. The North Cross spring had pushed back the relentless gray, and Mercury Row felt different. The blue juniper was still there, its windows dark and boarded, a monument to a night that had changed everything. But next to it, in the space that had been a defunct print shop, there was life. There was new light, a warm, inviting glow the color of a clementine. I called it the Midnight Clementine. It was not a diner. It was an open kitchen, a place that smelled of roasted garlic, fresh bread, and the sharp, bright scent of burnt orange peels from the bar. It was mine. Sarah's team handled the security. You would never know it. They were the hosts, the coat check, the smiling faces at the door. Kaido had designed the lighting system. The soft orange glow that filled the room was not just for ambiance. It was a network, a subtle web that ensured every guest felt safe, primarily because they were... Dante had changed his world, too. The Lucero Syndicate was restructured. He had walked away from the Iron Bridge waterway, ceding the territory. Instead, he and Father Knox had created the Harbor Cooperative, a new, clean logistics firm that prioritized legitimate shipping. It was not perfect, it was not sainthood, but it was a new beginning, built on a foundation that was not a lie. Mira was back. She was my bar manager. The first time I saw her again, after Father Knox brought her home, was difficult. We sat for hours in the half-finished shell of the Clementine. There were apologies. There were tears. The anger I had felt was gone, washed away by the simple fact that she was my friend. She had been scared, and we had both survived. Our friendship was not what it was. It was stronger, reforged. It was opening night. The restaurant was humming, a beautiful, controlled chaos. The bar was 3 deep, the kitchen was singing its rhythm, and the dining room was full of laughter. I was in the back, in my small office, checking inventory, when I heard it. It was not the sound of the restaurant. It was a sound on the heavy, steel kitchen delivery door, the one that opened onto the back alley. Boom, boom, boom. My heart stopped, then started again. A painful, happy leap. I wiped my hands on my apron, my pulse racing, and pulled the heavy door open. He stood in the dim light of the alley. When he was not in a suit or the long, dark overcoat, he was in a simple white shirt, the sleeves rolled up to his elbows. He looked tired, but his eyes were bright, a thin, silver line. The scar from the bullet was just visible on his shoulder, cutting through the fabric. "You're late," I said, my voice trying to sound steady. "Your reservation was for 8. "I prefer the kitchen entrance," Dante said. A small, real smile touched his lips. He was not carrying flowers. He was holding a small, silver service bell, the kind you tap on a hotel counter. He held it out to me. I took it. It was heavy and polished. Engraved on the surface, in simple script, was one word: Aria. "I want to hear this every night," he said, his voice low. "When I get home, at our home." He reached into his pocket and placed a single key in my hand. It was not a normal key. It was a heavy, electronic fob marked with the crest of the Aurora Spire, the glittering new penthouse that had redefined the North Cross skyline. I looked at the key, then at him. I did not say yes. I stepped out into the alley with him. Pulling the door partially shut, the sounds of the restaurant faded, replaced by the distant hum of the city. We were surrounded by the scent of burnt orange peel from the bar's exhaust vent, and the string lights I had hung myself cast a warm, intimate glow. He stepped closer. He did not ask again. He simply cupped my face, his hands warm and slightly rough, and kissed me. It was not the desperate kiss of the storm. It was not the fast, silencing kiss of the conservatory roof. It was long and slow and gentle. It was a kiss that tasted like the future, a future that involved quiet mornings and shared silences. It was the kiss of a partner, not a savior. I rested my forehead against his chest when he finally pulled back, my fingers curling into his shirt. "I agree," I whispered. "I will move in, but..." I am keeping the apartment at Ash Harbor. I felt him stiffen slightly, and I looked up at him. You are... I am, I said, a small smile playing on my lips. I am keeping it so that, every once in a while, when we need to remember where we came from, we can go back, and you can knock 3 times on the door, just like the first night. The tension left him. The smile that broke across his face was real and unguarded, and it was everything. Aria Vale, he said, you have just negotiated our own contract. He took my hand, and we walked out of the alley to the restaurant's front patio, the sea breeze pulling at my hair. The future was not perfect. It was not clean, but it was ours, and it was clear. My apron pocket buzzed. I pulled out the old, battered burner phone that had started it all. I had kept it. A lucky charm. A new text message was glowing on the green screen. It was not a code. It was not a threat. It was from Kaido, sitting at the corner table. Table 9, 2 espressos. I looked up at Dante. Holding out the phone, he read the screen, and he laughed, a real deep laugh that echoed in the night air. Well, he said, squeezing my hand, his eyes sparkling, you'd better get to work. We have to keep your heartbeat running on time. Thank you so much for listening to our story. We would love to know where you are listening from, so please comment below and share your thoughts. Be sure to subscribe to our channel, Mafia Boss Story, and like this video. Please support us further by pressing the hype button so this story can be heard by even more people.